Hi, and thank you for joining us this week. We are working on the third step, which is addressing systematic racism in prosecution. I'm so excited because today I have Lamar Wise with me. He is from AFSCME and also is on the SJO board, which is Safety and Justice Oregon. And I'm super glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we're just going to get right into these questions here. Maybe. All right, perfect. So when we're talking about racism in prosecution, we've had some of our earlier step conversations. And one thing that's really important to acknowledge is what is systematic racism?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because, as we think about racism, a lot of folks think about it as like a person-to-person thing where someone is mistreating someone based on, their ethnicity and skin color. Systematic racism really points to that being like that behavior of mistreatment and discrimination based upon, your skin color and ethnicity. Like all of that behavior is embedded in like a larger like institution, right? And so, believe it or not, it just about every institution and structure that has been created in the United States has some form of systematic or institutional racism because they were built without us being involved from the beginning. So believe it or not, really easy to do to be to have a systemic racism because we're talking about like long-standing structures that have continued to perpetuate harm for literally hundreds of years. So yeah.
And I like how you said that because, a lot of the times people don't really think about this too, where these systems were not only built without us, but they were actually built to work against us, most of them. So we look at like the origins of policing and all of these things, and these were actually meant as tools to really kind of keep us, Black folks and people of color in their place, so to speak. And so I think that was a really important distinction that you made. I like that. So what I think is odd, I hear this in conversations all the time, where people will say, well, the law is race neutral. It's, if you do the wrong thing, then the wrong thing happens. And obviously we know that that's not correct, but what harm in particular is done by upholding injustice in laws that are supposed to be race neutral?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear that, my mind immediately goes to folks kind of taking like a colorblind approach to justice work, where what the data shows time and time again, especially, we have hard data here in Oregon where our prisons are disproportionately Black, like their arrests, especially in like the metro area, disproportionately Black, Latinx, low income as well, right? So by continuing to uphold these quote unquote race neutral laws, it really turns a blind eye to to reality, what's actually happening, which is at the end of the day, like these laws do have a skew to them, and how we implement them, they do have a skew to them. True justice would mean that there would be proportionality across the board. Black people do not commit crimes at a higher rate than white people at the end of the day. Like that's not real. It is going back to the first question. It is the system perpetuating the racism that it was built upon. So it is so dangerous to continue as is, and without challenging, even if it's just to like get us to a better place as a society, like bare minimum, like we should be doing that. But at, you know, what we at maximum, and what we should be doing is having some intentionality about like how different laws affects different communities, because it's not a one size fits all. And we often legislate and make decisions based upon that, but that's not real. We're humans. And it's really hard to think about policy in a way of like flexibility, but at the end of the day, that, you know, that's what we need to strive towards, right? Is like a more a more like human-centered approach to policymaking.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because when I was younger and I moved here, it was total culture shock. I moved here from like an all Black community and then moved to Jefferson, Oregon. And so my whole growing up, I didn't really see other Black people really
Yeah.
ever. And then I started working in the prison when teaching the Pathfinders course when I was younger. And I remember walking in and going, where did all these Black people come from? Like, I was so shocked that Black people were even in Oregon. And it like, that's when it really like this wanting to do this work, like really hit me, because I was like, this can't be possible. Like,
Yeah.
so basically every Black person in our community that comes into our community commits a crime. This is wild. And it just was so eye-opening to me. So that's a great thing to bring up. And I think that, you know, that color blindness that everybody talks about, it really keeps people from understanding Black body trauma and, you know, putting that into their decision-making process. It keeps people from, you know, misunderstanding poverty and what that really means. And so there's so many things to pay attention to. And I hate that, like, you know, that race neutral kind of attitude that legislation really takes often. So as you know, Partnership for Safety and Justice highlighted that crime victims of color are the most harmed and are often the least helped by the criminal justice system. What roles can DAs have in ensuring that survivors of color are equitably served by our systems?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, ideally they're already doing this, but you know, at the end of the day, I think there needs to be like DAs really do need to be survivor focused. And from what I've seen at times, for a lot of DAs, that just means to prosecute the mess out of anyone who caused harm. When in a lot of our communities, and of course this doesn't happen all the time, but in a lot of instances, you know, the person who's done harm, like they're in our communities, we know them, you know, what have you. And a lot of times, you know, we do want justice, but it's not the type of justice that the DA wants. Like they want jail time. Like that's, you know, like that's what they campaign on. I think that their approach needs to be a bit more open, right? And to think about what restorative justice really means to that crime survivor and to that community. At the end of the day, you know, the justice system is to hold it. It's meant to hold people accountable. It's meant to rehabilitate people, and it should also be it should also be a way for folks who were harmed to be made whole, right? As much as possible, right? It's not always possible, but DAs should, you know, they should look at their job holistically. Like they are elected officials, they have a lot of power, right? They are the top public safety officers in their jurisdiction. You know, our communities deserve the best. We deserve the best in terms of what it means to actually have our folks be completely healed from wrongdoing, and that means truly centering survivors in the way that they want to be centered.
Awesome. And so this is this next one, this has been a big deal because even like, you know, just being a Black person in Oregon in politics or any type of legislation is like wild, right? It's like very uncommon. And as we kind of move forward, we're always looking for, you know, prosecutors that look like us, DAs that look like us, you know, we're always looking for that representation. How does systematic racism impact the career pathways that people of color take to become either an elected or becoming a career prosecutor? And how do you think those barriers can be relieved?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for just from the get-go, right? Like how a lot of the electoral systems have been created, you know, they were not created with us in mind. And to your point earlier, you know, a lot of it was built around making sure that people of color and folks that didn't have a whole lot of money were kept out of the system. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, we start from behind, and right, and having to do double to catch up. And I say that because, and you know, a lot of folks are like, well, like that's not true. Like everyone has to play by the same rules and all that. Sure, people have to play by the same rules, but in politics, there are these dynasties, right? There are these like mega donors. There are these small groups of folks who are able to control appointment processes. They're able to, you know, if you know the right people, you have access to different resources and connections that other folks may not have. A lot of people of color, especially working from community or nonprofit work or what have you, don't have those connections. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, we're forced to do grassroots work, which is not bad, right? Like grassroots work is, in my opinion, the most powerful thing in politics. And at the same time, the mental gymnastics that our people have to do in order to survive either a line of questioning or like the attacks that our folks, our like candidates receive. You know, like for example, you know, I worked a lot on Nafisa Fai's campaign. She was the first Black woman Muslim to be on the Washington County Commission. White candidates, they do not have to experience racism at the doors. They don't have to experience racism on the phones where, you know, we're calling folks and people are saying like, oh, that name sounds like it's not from here. Like, where is she from? Or like, you know, what have you, like, or like, oh no, like I only vote for Americans, you know, stuff like that. Exactly. Right.
Right.
Like this is like what our folks have to go through in order to like hold even just like the nominal amount of power. And so all that to be said, like, you know, it's an uphill battle, and, you know, we are at the precipice of like building structures in order to support folks regardless of those barriers. And you know, really excited to do that work.
Yeah, I think it's like even, you know, even sometimes sitting in rooms like on the nonprofit sphere when you're not even trying to go that far, like you hear these things and you're like, what?
Yeah.
You know, like even like you can't think that, like, you know, it's 2022, you can't still think that. And these are folks that are already, you know, either already elected or, you know, already like in a place, and you're like, this is really how you believe. Okay. So yeah, it makes it so much more difficult. How do we know when a prosecutor or DA is contributing to systematic racism?
Yeah. Well, here's a short answer. They probably are. Chances are they're doing it. It's really hard not to, especially in that position. But you know, I think prosecuting just to prosecute, right? Like what we see, like I said earlier, the trend for most DAs is that they will ask for the maximum amount of prison time, and that's how they're keeping the community safe, right? That is very, especially as we look at, again, the data and how there is a higher rate of Black and brown folks in prison, without district attorneys actually looking at alternative ways, or actually, think that if their train of thought is not to restore both the person harmed and also to rehabilitate the person who has done harm, they're contributing to a white supremacist system, right? And it's very easy for them to play into like the safety messaging, right? Like at the end of the day, like when we saw like the war on drugs, and a lot of that messaging is coming back. Like a lot of that messaging is coming back because it's effective in scaring people and getting them reelected. They've literally built their power on getting people into prison, and so it's really hard to not do that. But yeah, it's, if they're just looking to maximize the amount of jail time and not really looking at anything else, I think they're just going to continue to contribute to what the current system is.
And one thing I've been like really paying attention to, or like investigating actually, is as DA races are actually currently happening, is which counties have like the highest disparities. That says so much to me right there, especially when we look at like the population of those counties. It's like, this doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
So I think I'm frozen, but that's okay. We'll keep it trucking. So what are some examples, either locally or nationally, where prosecutors have worked with Black, Indigenous, or other people of color to develop solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the district attorney in Multnomah County, Mike Schmidt, I think has worked with several of our communities, right? Of course, we are still apt to hold him accountable as well, but even while he was running, he had a lot of conversations with communities of color and a lot of discussions, and his transition team, over half of his team were people of color, and really looking at the best way to do his job before even getting in. And on top of that, him and that office, they have taken steps to look at more restorative justice programs, and holding folks, particularly police, accountable, right? And so I think that has been a good example. Of course, it's a very, like, I would say, new thing, and something that we are that we're still monitoring closely. But at the end of the day, at having someone from the forefront, having these conversations, and starting to build out policy that is reflective of what the community has asked for, I think is like at least a good start. It's a starting place for us to create a better world for us.
Awesome. All right. So just real quick, Lamar, I'm going to hop off and then try to hop back on because this is weird. So hang tight.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I'm back. Okay.
Hey.
Was like, that was weird. Alrighty. All right, so we're gonna get back into it, and then I think this is our last question. So in an earlier conversation, One of our guests have said that it's important for prosecutors to engage with trusted organizations in the community. And this is so super important. I always see folks asking just the wrong people for the wrong information. I think this happens a lot. How can prosecutors know what organizations are actually trusted by communities of color?
Um, how could how could prosecutors know that organizations are trust?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think because in our communities we have, it's hard. It's hard to navigate. I think we have some organizations that claim to speak for us and are
mm,
culturally maybe responsive, but not culturally, like it's not run by us for us, right? Like
right.
how can a prosecutor tell? How do they know who's doing what in the community?
Yeah, right. That's okay. I got you. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I like well, first and foremost, we're not a monolith. What the prosecutor and DA should be doing is seeking a variety of voices in the first place, right? And not assuming that one organization is holding the opinions of a whole community. So that's first. I guess secondly, you know, is that DA, are they asking questions about like who's in the leadership of that organization, and what and could they be invited to community conversations, right? Because I think it's really hard. It's really hard to hide if you're a community-based organization or not, because if you are, you got people. You got people, because we're talking to them day in, day out, in informing them of what's happening, like policy wise, or what's happening with different programs. That's a telltale sign, right? Like, does your organization, do they have organizers? Do they have organizers? Yeah, like that's probably should be the first
I
question.
I think one of the other things is too, and I see this like an awful lot, and actually people have tried to do this to me, and then when I don't say the right thing, they're like, okay, never mind. But folks like gravitate towards a person of color that shares their messaging, and then they
Yeah,
don't go any further, right? Like they're like, oh, here's a Black person that agrees with whatever.
yeah,
And then they're like, oh, but I asked, right? But I checked in. Or we see this a lot too, where, especially elected folks or, whatever will make an offhand comment or do something, racially insensitive, and then they'll go directly to the NAACP, right? And they're like, oh,
yeah.
we had a conversation with the NAACP, so it's totally okay. And it's like, no, but it's not okay. Like,
Not
right?
okay.
So I see that happen like all the time, where like folks really just they find a person of color that shares their sentiment, and then they just run with that, like we are monoliths, like we are in agreement with that. When typically when that occurs, like the community as a whole is not generally in agreement. It's like this one person of color. And so it's definitely interesting. I think it's like different for prosecutors to even really know like who they should talk to, but that's a good concept. You should be talking to more than one. Like you should have a
Yeah.
well-rounded community base. That's cool. And last question, if you could tell our newest DA candidates, if you could tell our current DAs one thing, what would it be?
Oh boy. What would it be? I yeah, I would say, you know, God, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. I would say, at the end of the day, you need to do the work internally first, within yourself, before moving forward with any of this, before moving forward with running, before, your first prosecution, before you staff. Folks, you got to do the internal work to really purse out like any privilege that you have, identify how you yourself have done harm, and really start thinking about and come to terms with, what needs to happen to really center community voices in the work, right? Like, but we cannot have any performative or kind of like any fake gestures of real work being done. Our communities have been hurting for too long, and have been locked up and shut out for too long. And like hundreds of lives should not depend on your white fragility. So, assuming that the people that are running are white, if you're not white, everyone has privilege. So I would say still do that internal work, but really, I would say really take that time. It'll pay off in long term, and will help to build trust with community later.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking this time, Lamar. I know you're extremely busy. We appreciate you. And again, that was step 3. And that was limiting racism in systematic structures, which obviously the GA is a super systematic structure. So come back with us next week. We'll be here again with step 4. And I look forward to talking to you then.